Previously on a love that lingered, Arthur made the difficult choice to fulfill his duty to the crown, preparing to leave his wife, his mother, and Oliver behind at the manor. The last days before his departure were spent in bittersweet closeness, each moment together a memory to carry into uncertain days ahead. Grace held herself steady, becoming the pillar for those around her, even as her heart quietly fractured. This is episode 25, The Weight of Waiting. The manor had taken on a peculiar silence in Arthur's absence. It wasn't the silence of stillness, but the silence of something missing, a low hum beneath the daily tasks, like a song cut short. Every morning Grace woke to the empty stretch of space beside her in their bed, her hand brushing across the cool sheets where his warmth used to linger. The ache was sharpest then, before she dressed for the day, and tucked her emotions neatly behind her practiced smile. It had been 3 weeks since Arthur's departure. The days blurred into one another. Breakfast shared with Lady Caldwell in a subdued dining hall. Afternoons spent walking the gardens with Oliver. Evenings alone with candlelight flickering across the pages of unfinished letters she never sent. Every hour was colored by waiting. Grace found herself gravitating to the windows more than she intended. The wide front-facing windows that overlooked the gravel drive, the narrow slits in the upper halls that offered a view of the hills beyond. Each became her vantage point to a world that had carried Arthur away from her. Sometimes she imagined the sound of carriage wheels or the distant thunder of hooves, her heart leaping in foolish hope that he might return sooner than expected. But always, it was the wind, the rustle of trees, the echo of absence. She told herself to be stronger than this. Arthur had left her with responsibilities, and she had promised him she would shoulder them. There were staff to oversee, tenants to correspond with, accounts to balance. She did each task with precision, but all the while, her heart counted days in a way ink and ledgers never could. Then one morning the postwriter came. Grace had been in the parlor, mending a rip in one of Oliver's jackets, when the knock sounded. The postman entered with the bundle of mail, and there, pressed between the ordinary folds of correspondence, was a letter bearing Arthur's seal. Her fingers trembled as she broke it open, the familiar scrawl of his handwriting spilling across the page. The words weren't long, but they were enough. He was well. He had arrived safely. He was stationed near a river stronghold, tasked with training and patrols. He thought of her constantly. He longed for her letters, her words, her touch across the distance. Grace exhaled for the first time in weeks. It was as though she had been holding her breath all this time without knowing it, her lungs only now filling again. She pressed the letter to her chest, closing her eyes, and for a moment Arthur wasn't so far away. Oliver noticed the change in her almost immediately. She entered the dining hall that morning with the faintest glow about her. The stiffness in her shoulders softened, her voice lighter. He caught sight of the folded letter in her hand and didn't need to ask whose words were written inside. "You heard from him," Oliver said quietly, a mixture of relief and something else flickering behind his eyes. "Yes." Grace's smile was small but true. "He's safe. He sounds well?" Oliver nodded, though his gaze fell to the tablecloth. "That's good. That's very good." She caught the tension in his voice. Oliver had been restless since Arthur's departure, the weight of his inability to follow still heavy upon him. He carried himself with a determination to step into Arthur's role, within the manor. But beneath it was a storm of doubt and guilt. Grace had seen it in the way he lingered near her, reluctant to leave her alone for too long, as though by staying close he might prove his worth. "Oliver," she said gently, placing the letter down, "you've been a comfort to me, truly. I don't know how I'd have borne these weeks without your company." He looked up then, startled by her earnestness. "I haven't done enough. Arthur trusted me to look after things, and you have," Grace interrupted, firmer this time. "You've done more than you realize. You've made me laugh when I thought I couldn't. You've carried burdens I couldn't ask of you. You've kept me from drowning in my own worry." His throat bobbed with unspoken words, emotion flashing in his blue eyes. For a moment he looked much younger, as if the mask of stoicism he wore had slipped. "I just," Oliver exhaled, shaking his head. "He's everything I have, everything I've known, and now he's out there fighting, bleeding perhaps, and I'm here." His voice cracked. "Here, useless." Grace reached for his hand without thinking, her touch steady and warm. "You're not useless, Oliver. You're his strength here, even if he doesn't see it. And mine, too." For a long moment he held her gaze, his jaw tightening. Then he nodded, squeezing her hand before pulling back, as though ashamed of the vulnerability he had shown. In the days that followed, Grace and Oliver found a rhythm. They took their meals together often, walked the estate grounds in the evenings, shared silences that weren't heavy but rather companionable. Oliver began to speak more freely, recounting small stories of his and Arthur's childhood, mischief in the stables, near disasters with firecrackers in the summer fields, long afternoons of fencing practice. Grace listened with hungry ears, each tale a thread weaving her closer to the man she loved, even in absence. The letters from Arthur came steadily after that first, sometimes short, sometimes longer, always filled with longing. Grace answered each faithfully, her replies carefully penned late at night when the manor was quiet. She told him of the gardens, of Oliver's antics, of the way the house seemed to sigh without him in it. But beneath her descriptions ran a steady refrain: "I am waiting. I am with you always." And though Oliver never read the letters, he knew their contents in essence, for her whole demeanor changed each time she held one in her hand. Still, for all the comfort, there lingered a shadow neither of them could dispel. The war was creeping closer. Arthur's words were careful, but Grace sensed the weight he tried to hide, the skirmishes that grew more frequent, the nights he wrote by firelight, weary from drills and patrols. She tucked the fear away. But it remained, a thorn pressing against every beat of hope. One evening, as summer's warmth began to fade into autumn's chill, Grace sat by the fire in the drawing room with Oliver across from her. He had dozed off, his head resting against the armchair, the faintest crease of worry still etched across his brow, even in sleep. Grace held Arthur's most recent letter in her lap, reading the words for the 5th time that day. His script was hurried but affectionate, his closing lines still echoing in her mind. "If the stars grant me their mercy, I will see you before the snow falls." She closed her eyes, clutching the page to her chest. "Come back to me, Arthur," she whispered to the empty air. "Come back whole." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for once she allowed herself to weep, not for the first time, but more openly, the firelight catching her tears. Oliver stirred, roused by the sound. His eyes opened, and for a moment he simply watched her, caught between hesitation and instinct. Then softly he said, "He will." Grace looked up, startled to find him awake. His expression was earnest, pained but steady. "He will come back," Oliver repeated. "Arthur is too stubborn not to." A shaky laugh escaped her, though it was threaded with sorrow. "You sound so sure." "I have to be," Oliver said simply. "If I let myself think otherwise, I won't endure it." Their eyes held across the glow of the fire, a silent bond formed not by choice but by necessity. Two souls tethered to the same absence, clinging to the same fragile hope. The manor settled into uneasy quiet once more that night. Grace retired to her chamber, Arthur's letter still beneath her pillow, while Oliver lingered in the hall, staring out into the night, as if searching for answers in the stars. Far from the manor, Arthur sat by a dying campfire, quill in hand, struggling to write words that would not frighten her. The fighting was pressing closer. His training had been tested more than once. And though he longed to promise her safety, he knew such vows were fragile things. In the flicker of firelight, he penned a single line, one that would reach her in days' time. "My dearest Grace, the world is darker than I imagined, but the thought of you is my light." The ink smeared slightly as he folded the letter, sealing it with weary hands. He looked to the horizon, where smoke still lingered from the day's skirmish, and whispered to himself, "Hold on for me, my love.